No one in the mansion expected the maid to be the center of attention that evening. The room was filled with millionaires, CEOs, and socialites, all dressed in designer suits and sparkling evening gowns. Golden chandeliers lit up the marble floors, and the air smelled like expensive perfume mixed with the faintest hint of old money. But amid all that wealth, standing silently in the corner with her hands nervously folded, was Rosa, the maid who everyone pretended not to see. Little did they know, before the night was over, every single person in that room would remember her name. And it all started with a cruel joke from the richest man there. Before we dive deeper into this journey, take a moment to support this channel. If you enjoy stories that touch the heart and inspire the soul, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories too. Mr. Blake Henderson was a self-made billionaire, known for his flashy displays of wealth and his ruthless business deals. He loved being the center of attention. He had built his fortune from scratch, turning a small tech startup into a global empire. But along with his success came arrogance. Blake enjoyed making people feel small, especially those who worked for him. That night, during one of his legendary dinner parties, he decided that Rosa, just the maid, would be the target of his next joke. As the guests laughed and clinked their glasses, Blake stood up with a mischievous grin. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, raising his champagne flute, "I think it's time for some entertainment. And tonight, our lovely maid Rosa will be performing for us." The room erupted in laughter. Rosa froze. Her face turned pale. She looked down, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. The truth was, Rosa had a secret, one that not even Blake, with all his millions and his need for control, could ever imagine. But as she stood there, her heart racing and her hands trembling, she felt trapped. Refusing would mean risking her job. She needed the money. Every paycheck helped support her sick mother back home. The cost of medicine alone was more than she could afford on her maid's salary. She couldn't afford to make a scene. The guests watched her, whispering, some smirking, others just curious. Blake waved his hand toward the grand piano in the corner of the room. "Come on, Rosa," he said, his voice dripping with fake kindness. "Show us what you've got. Or are you too scared?" The entire room fell silent, waiting to see what the poor maid would do. Rosa's legs felt like stone, but something inside her shifted. Slowly, she walked toward the piano. With each step, memories flooded her mind. Nights spent practicing on an old, out-of-tune keyboard in her small apartment. The childhood dream she had buried long ago when life forced her to choose survival over passion. Sitting down on the velvet piano bench, she took a deep breath. Her fingers hovered above the keys. The room stayed silent, but the tension was electric. Blake leaned back in his chair, smirking, clearly expecting a disaster. Guests exchanged amused glances. "Any minute now," one whispered, "she'll embarrass herself." But Rosa, she had other plans. With the first note, the mood shifted. The sound that came from the piano wasn't awkward or clumsy. It was breathtaking. Melodies flowed like silk, delicate but powerful. Each note carried emotion, years of struggle, sacrifice, and unspoken pain. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Even Blake, still holding his smug grin, slowly straightened in his chair, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. No one could move. No one could speak. All eyes were glued to Rosa, the maid they had all overlooked, the maid whose talent was now filling every corner of that mansion with something money could never buy. Raw, soul-stirring beauty. The piece grew more intense. Her fingers danced faster, pouring out a story of heartbreak and resilience without saying a single word. Guests exchanged shocked glances. One woman whispered, "Who is she?" Another man, a renowned music producer, mouthed to himself, "This is incredible." Even the servants, standing at the edges of the room, watched with tears in their eyes. As Rosa reached the final crescendo, she closed her eyes and let her hands fall gently on the last chord, letting the sound linger, like a soft echo refusing to leave. And for a long, heavy moment there was only silence. The silence after Rosa's final note was deafening. It stretched across the room like an invisible force, making everyone hold their breath. And then it happened. A single slow clap. All heads turned. It was Mrs. Whitmore, a well-known philanthropist and patron of the arts, sitting at the front table. Her diamond necklace sparkled under the chandelier light as she stood up, continuing to clap. One by one, others joined in. Applause spread like wildfire. Soon the entire room, millionaires, CEOs, and socialites, was on their feet, giving Rosa a standing ovation. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. Others exchanged guilty looks, realizing how quickly they had judged her simply because she was wearing a maid's uniform. But amid all the applause, Blake Henderson sat frozen. His smile had vanished. His jaw tightened. For the first time that evening, he had lost control of the room. Blake's face turned red as he forced a laugh, trying to regain his arrogant composure. Well, who knew our maid was hiding such a charming little hobby? His words dripped with sarcasm, but no one laughed this time. People kept clapping for Rosa. Some guests even approached her, eager to shake her hand or offer compliments. A few of them whispered offers to help her pursue music professionally. Rosa stood there overwhelmed, her heart pounding, not from fear this time, but from a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. She looked down at her trembling hands, still not believing what had just happened. All those years of dreaming, all those nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering if her talent would ever mean anything. And now right here, in front of the wealthiest people she'd ever seen. Her music had broken through the walls of money and prejudice. As the guests surrounded her, asking questions, Blake grew more uncomfortable. He hated losing attention, especially in his own mansion. His fortune had bought him power, influence, and control over every room he entered. But tonight, that power had slipped through his fingers. "All right, everyone," he said loudly, forcing another fake laugh. "Let's not forget why we're here. The auction starts in 10 minutes. His attempt to change the subject felt desperate. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the energy of the room had changed. People kept glancing back at Rosa, whispering her name, sharing her story. Even guests who barely knew each other started conversations about her performance. The millionaire who mocked the maid had unintentionally made her the star of the night. Meanwhile, in a quieter corner of the mansion, Rosa found herself approached by Mr. Grant Sullivan, a gray-haired man with kind eyes and a reputation as one of the biggest music producers in the city. "That wasn't just talent," he said softly, handing her his business card. "That was soul, raw and beautiful. Call me on Monday. I want to talk about your future." Rosa's hands shook as she accepted the card, staring at the golden lettering that spelled out a name she had seen on dozens of famous album covers. Her mind spun. Was this really happening? After years of cleaning floors and scrubbing windows just to survive, could she finally have a chance at the life she had always dreamed of? But as Rosa slipped the card into her pocket, she felt Blake's eyes burning into her from across the room. His face was tight with something between anger and jealousy. That's when he stood up, grabbed his microphone, and did something no one expected. With a sly grin, he said, "Before we move on with the evening, how about one more performance from our star of the night? Rosa, why don't you show us if you're really more than just a one-song wonder?" The crowd murmured in confusion. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others waited eagerly to see what Rosa would do next. Would she sit back down and risk ruining the magic she had just created? Or would she rise to the challenge and show everyone once again that talent and heart were worth more than any millionaire's ego? Rosa sat there, staring at the piano, her heart pounding louder than any applause she had just received. The air grew thick with tension. Some guests leaned forward, eager for more. Others exchanged worried glances, sensing the humiliation tactic behind Blake's so-called invitation. But Rosa, she knew exactly what this was. Blake wasn't asking for more music out of admiration. This was about control, about proving that no matter how talented she was still, in his eyes, just a maid. Her job, her place, her lack of wealth, it all made her easy to manipulate, or so Blake thought. But Rosa wasn't the same woman she had been 30 minutes ago. Something inside her had shifted. And this time, she wasn't playing for him. She stood up, her voice steady but soft. "If that's what the room wants, I'd be happy to." The crowd's murmur grew louder. Some guests clapped, others shouted words of encouragement. Rosa sat back at the piano, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes, This time, she didn't play something she had practiced for years. Instead, she improvised, letting the keys guide her, letting her heart speak. The melody that flowed was haunting, filled with emotion that even the richest person in the room, no matter how big their fortune, could feel deep inside. It was hope. It was pain. It was resilience. People stood silent, as if afraid that making any noise would break the spell. Blake's smirk faded completely. For the first time that evening, he felt small, like the money in his bank account, the cars parked outside, even the gold-plated awards in his study. None of it mattered in front of what Rosa was creating. As the song built toward a breathtaking climax, Rosa's fingers moved faster, pouring years of invisible suffering into each note. Her whole life, she believed she was just a girl cleaning rooms for the rich. But now she realized, talent didn't wear uniforms. Dreams didn't care about social class. When she finished, the room erupted again, louder than before. Some people screamed her name. Others stomped their feet in appreciation. A few guests had tears running down their faces, completely undone by the raw beauty of her performance. But what happened next was something no one saw coming. Blake, red-faced and clearly out of options, grabbed the mic once more. "Well, now that Rosa's had her moment," he said, forcing a bitter laugh, "let's all remember why we're here. To raise money for charity." His tone was sharp, but no one responded. The guests kept their eyes on Rosa, ignoring Blake's desperate attempts to shift the spotlight. Mrs. Whitmore stood up again. "Actually," she said, raising her glass, "I'd like to make a special announcement. I'll personally sponsor Rosa's first professional album, and I think it's time we give her a proper round of applause. Not as a maid, but as an artist." The room exploded with cheers. Cameras came out. Guests took selfies with Rosa. Offers for interviews and performances began pouring in. Her name started trending on social media before the night was even over. Rosa stood there in disbelief, her hands still shaking. This was more than she ever dreamed of. A few minutes later, Mr. Sullivan, the music producer, approached her again and whispered, "I wasn't kidding about that call on Monday. We're going to make something magical together." Meanwhile, Blake stood in the corner, clutching his glass of champagne tighter with every passing second, watching as his guests, his millionaire friends, gravitated toward the woman he had once mocked. The woman whose talent had just turned his entire world upside down. For the first time in years, Blake realized that all the money in the world couldn't buy the kind of respect Rosa had just earned in a single night. As the night wore on, Rosa found herself surrounded by people who, just hours before, hadn't even noticed she existed. Millionaires who once wouldn't spare her a glance were now handing her business cards, complimenting her skill, and asking about her musical background. "Where did you train?" one woman asked, her diamond earrings catching the light. Rosa smiled shyly and answered honestly, "I didn't. I taught myself between cleaning shifts." That simple sentence sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. People were amazed. The idea that someone with no formal education in music, no fancy mentors, and certainly no wealth could perform like that, it didn't fit their world of private tutors and exclusive conservatories. And yet here, Rosa stood, breaking every expectation, shattering every stereotype. As Rosa continued answering questions, Blake stayed by the bar, his face growing darker with every passing minute. The attention she received felt like an insult to him. After all, Blake had built this world with money. Every person in that room owed him something, whether it was a business deal, a favor, or a place on the guest list. But tonight, no one cared about his fortune. No one cared about his luxury cars or designer suits. They cared about the maid, the girl whose music had touched their hearts in a way that no bank account ever could. Blake's ego burned hotter than ever. How dare she steal his spotlight? How dare she, someone with no wealth, no status, stand above him in his own house? And then an idea began to form in Blake's mind. Twisting with bitterness, he approached Rosa with a smile so fake it practically dripped with poison. "Rosa," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "you certainly entertained us tonight. I'm impressed, truly." The room fell silent again. People watched closely, sensing the tension. Blake continued, "In fact, I'd like to offer you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How would you like a full scholarship to the most prestigious music school in Europe? All expenses paid. Tuition, housing, everything. Consider it my personal gift to you." Gasps filled the room. Some people clapped. Others looked at Rosa with wide eyes, waiting for her answer. It sounded like a dream come true. A millionaire offering her a golden ticket to success. But Rosa, she wasn't naive. She looked at Blake's face, at the thin layer of sarcasm hidden beneath his words, at the way his jaw tensed, like he was daring her to accept just so he could say later that her success came from him, not from her own talent. For a split second, her heart raced. Was this really generosity? Or was it Blake's latest power play? Taking a deep breath, Rosa stepped forward. Her voice was calm but strong. "That's very generous of you, Mr. Henderson," she said, locking eyes with him. "But I think I'll make it on my own. I've come this far without your money, and I'll keep going without it." The room went silent again. People blinked in shock. No one had ever publicly turned down a millionaire's offer before, especially not Blake Henderson's. And yet there she stood, unshaken, unafraid. For the first time that night, it was Blake who didn't know what to say. Suddenly, guests began clapping, louder than before. Not just for her talent now, but for her courage, for her refusal to be bought. Rosa's rejection became the defining moment of the evening. People recorded it on their phones. Some whispered that it was the most inspiring thing they'd seen in years. And as Rosa stood there taking the applause, she realized something powerful. True wealth wasn't measured in money, but in dignity, in talent, and in the courage to stand tall even when the richest man in the room tried to bring you down. The applause that filled the room after Rosa's bold refusal wasn't just noise. It was a statement that the guests, many of them millionaires themselves, understood exactly what had just happened. They saw courage. They saw authenticity. And perhaps for the first time in a long while, they saw something money couldn't manufacture. Integrity. Some guests even started chanting her name softly, as if she were some kind of celebrity. Blake stood there frozen, staring at Rosa with a look that mixed shock, anger, and disbelief. This was his home, his event, his carefully curated circle of wealthy admirers. And yet tonight, none of it mattered. His fortune, his social status. All of it was suddenly powerless against the emotional wave that Rosa had created. As the night began to wind down, Rosa quietly excused herself and stepped outside for a moment. The cool night air filled her lungs as she leaned against the marble railing of the mansion's balcony. The city lights stretched far below, reminding her of the countless nights she had spent walking home after her shifts, too exhausted to dream but too stubborn to give up. Tonight things had changed, but with the change came a rush of questions. What happens next? Could she really build a career in music? Would people still remember her in the morning when the glitter and excitement faded? As she stood there lost in thought, a soft voice interrupted her. It was Mrs. Whitmore. The older woman approached Rosa with a warm smile, holding a small velvet box in her hand. "I want you to have this," she said, opening the box to reveal a delicate gold necklace with a single pearl. "It was a gift to me when I first started supporting the arts. It brought me luck. Maybe it'll do the same for you." Rosa's eyes welled up with tears. She accepted the necklace with trembling hands and whispered, "Thank you. I don't even know what to say." Mrs. Whitmore smiled, placing a gentle hand on Rosa's shoulder. "You've already said enough, dear, with your music." Meanwhile, back inside, Blake paced the floor of his private study, gripping a glass of whiskey so tightly that the ice cubes cracked. He couldn't stand the humiliation. His closest friends had left the party early, avoiding awkward conversations. Others stayed behind, still buzzing with excitement over Rosa's performance. Blake's phone buzzed with notifications, social media already flooded with clips of Rosa playing, people calling her the piano maid, and praising her bravery for rejecting his offer. The story was spreading faster than he could control it. His fortune had protected him from public embarrassment for years. But tonight, even money couldn't erase the damage. Suddenly, Blake's assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, there's a reporter from the local news waiting outside. They want to comment about the event." Blake clenched his jaw. "Tell them we'll comment, and get everyone out of my house. Now." He slammed the door shut and sank into his leather chair, staring at the floor. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. All the wealth in his bank accounts couldn't fix this. All the investments, properties, luxury cars, none of it could turn back time. Outside, as Rosa left the mansion, Her phone buzzed with messages of support. Old friends, strangers, even small music agencies were reaching out. She smiled, holding the velvet box close to her heart. With every step she took away from that mansion, she felt lighter, freer. She didn't know exactly what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was an artist, and her life was about to change forever. The next morning, the story had already gone viral. Social media platforms were flooded with clips of Rosa at the piano, her hands moving with grace and emotion, her face filled with raw intensity. Headlines read, "Millionaire mocked Maid." Her talent left the room speechless, and from Maid to star, the piano performance that changed everything. Influencers, journalists, and even musicians started sharing the video, praising Rosa's courage and authenticity. Comments poured in by the thousands, people applauding her talent, her bravery for standing up to Blake Henderson, and her refusal to be bought, even when offered what most would consider a dream opportunity funded by a millionaire's fortune. Rosa woke up to hundreds of missed calls and messages from unknown numbers. She scrolled through them, smiling, but also feeling a little overwhelmed. Her heart raced as she realized the whole city, maybe even the whole country, now knew her name. Downstairs in her small apartment, her landlord, Mr. Gomez, knocked on the door, holding a newspaper. "You're on the front page," he said, beaming with pride. Rosa laughed softly as she took the paper and saw her own picture, captured mid-performance, eyes closed, fingers dancing across the piano keys. It felt surreal. Just yesterday, she had been scrubbing floors, worried about making rent. And now this. Her phone rang again, this time with a call from Mr. Sullivan, the music producer from a party. "Good morning, Rosa," he said, his tone warm but businesslike. "I hope you're ready, because today, your real journey begins. There's a studio slot available this afternoon. Think you can make it?" Her heart jumped. "Yes, absolutely," she replied without hesitation. "Good," he said with a chuckle. "We're something that makes you feel like a star. Because after today, that's exactly what you'll be." Hanging up the phone, Rosa stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in. Her dream, the one she thought she'd buried under years of cleaning supplies and late-night shifts, was finally within reach. But as she started getting ready, her smile faded just slightly, because there was still one shadow lingering over her newfound success. Blake Henderson. Back at Blake's mansion, the mood was drastically different. Blake sat at his breakfast table, staring at the same headlines that everyone else was reading. His assistant entered, nervously holding a tablet. "Sir, your name's trending again, but not in the way you'd like." Blake's face darkened as he read the comments flooding his official social media pages. Words like arrogant bully and classist millionaire popped up again and again. Even some of his business partners had left subtle public remarks distancing themselves from him. One comment, pinned to the top, read, "All the money in the world can't buy you class." Blake slammed his fist onto the table, sending his expensive silverware flying. His entire reputation, carefully built over years, was crumbling, all because of one maid, one piano, and one moment he hadn't been able to control. "Get my PR team on the phone," he barked at his assistant. "I want this buried. Now." But deep down, Blake knew there were some things even fortune couldn't fix. The internet had already chosen its hero and its villain. Meanwhile, at the studio later that afternoon, Rosa stepped into a recording booth for the first time in her life. As the producer signaled her to start, she placed her fingers on the keys and smiled. This time there was no fear, no Blake, no mansion, just her and the music. As the first notes filled the room, Rosa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete freedom. This wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning. Before we close this unforgettable story, take a moment to reflect on what just happened here. Rosa's journey wasn't just about music, it was about breaking barriers, standing tall in the face of humiliation, and proving that true worth isn't measured by money, luxury, or status. It's measured by heart, resilience, and the courage to believe in yourself even when the world tries to put you in a box. Rosa didn't let her job, title, define her. She didn't let a millionaire's arrogance silence her. And most importantly, she didn't let fear stop her from sharing her gift with the world. Think about that for a second. How many times in life do we hold ourselves back because we believe we're not enough? Not rich enough, not important enough, not talented enough. But Rosa showed us none of that matters when your passion is real. Maybe you're sitting there right now, doubting your own dreams, wondering if you'll ever get your chance. Maybe people have told you that you don't belong, that you're not qualified, that your background or your bank account defines your future. But let this story be the reminder you need: talent, heart, and courage. They have no price tag. And when the right moment comes, they speak louder than any fortune ever could. Rosa's life changed in one single night. Yours could too. The next opportunity might be just around the corner, waiting for you to step up and claim it. All it takes is one bold moment, one decision not to back down, one refusal to stay silent. So if Rosa's story touched you in any way, if you felt her fear, her hope, and her victory, do something powerful right now. Hit that like button to show your support for stories that matter. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement today. And most importantly, leave a comment below telling us, what's your dream? What's that thing you've been scared to chase because you felt not enough? We read every single comment, and we'd love to hear your story too. And if you want more inspiring stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because here on this channel, we believe everyone has a story worth telling. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, your voice matters. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.